Hello and welcome once again to World View on Dialogus. I'm Vishal Dahiya, and as you're aware, in this show we talk about issues of global importance, the international issues which have a bearing on geopolitics. Today we're going to talk about the Israel-Hamas war. Now, after a 2-month-long ceasefire, both sides are back at it again. The ceasefire was broken by Israel's resumption of bombardment on Gaza, and it was responded to in kind by Hamas as well. As far as Israel and Hamas are concerned, and then conflict in this region is concerned, it is nothing new. Both sides have fought more than a dozen wars for almost 6 to 7 decades now. But this war has gone on for more than 500 days. We'll of course try and understand as to what might be the likely resolution to this conflict. But more importantly, we will try and analyze and understand various ramifications of this Israel-Hamas war on global geopolitics, specifically for Israel, of course, for Gaza and Palestine as well, their neighbors like Lebanon, but also how players like international players like China seemingly have managed to gain a foothold, what happens in the Arab world, and how Israel-United States relationships have also undergone a sea change because of this conflict, which began on 7th of October 2023 with Hamas terror strikes in Israeli territory. For more on this, we're joined by two distinguished panel of experts. Let me first introduce them to you, beginning with former Ambassador Virendra Gupta, who is also the man who opened up Indian embassy in Israel in 1992. He is also the patron of Rashtriya Sahyog Parishad. And we're also joined by retired Major General Sanjay Meston, a strategic analyst. Welcome, both of you gentlemen, to Worldview. I'll begin with you, Ambassador Virendra Gupta, because as I was pointing out, you're the guy who represented India in 1992, way back when we opened up our embassy. Let's first set the ball rolling by trying to understand as to what's happening in that particular region right now.
Well, there has been historically lack of trust between Israel and the Palestinians. The Israelis feel a great degree of insecurity. There have been bombardment, there have been terrorist incidents. And the Palestinians, on the other hand, have been clamoring for a respectable solution. So I think there are these expectations, and both these things, Israel's aspiration to live in secure borders, and the Palestinians aspiring to have an independent country of their own, they're both very, very legitimate. And I think a broad degree of acceptance at the universal level. Why is it not happening? Because of continued lack of trust. And I don't think these two parties can really come together and talk. They have broken that kind of connection. So they need the others to do it, others to prod them and bring them together. America has traditionally played that role, but Biden was very weak-kneed approach. In fact, you mentioned about other players having leveraged into the Palestinian conflict. China having, wanting to play some role. But I think with the coming back of Trump, the situation has changed dramatically. Trump has very assertively taken control of the situation, and he's pushing both the parties. Firstly, the truce that we saw in January, that was very largely the doings of the Trump team. It has broken. So now they are at it again. They are with both the parties, and okay. It's been a devastating conflict. More than 50,000 people dead on the Palestinian side, several thousand people dead on the Israeli side. But more than the number of lives lost, there is a great humanitarian disaster. Millions of people have been displaced. I mean, almost the entire Gaza population of about 2 million has been displaced. They've been forced to, flee their homes. And this has not been factored in fully. This has not been fully comprehended. So I think there is need to bring both the parties to be brought together, to cease hostilities, and eventually to work for a permanent solution. I mean, not just reconstruction. Reconstruction of Gaza is a small matter, but I think a permanent solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, which is the crying need of the hour.
Okay, okay. Let me bring in General Meston here as well. General Meston, as Mr. Gupta is pointing out, this conflict has brought about a huge humanitarian crisis as well. Both sides, Israel and Hamas have fought several wars, but this one seemingly is becoming very bloody, very painful for both sides in terms of loss of lives, in terms of displacement of people from Gaza, humanitarian crisis all around as well. But when we are looking at the solution, do you think the two-state solution is still on the table here?
Vishal, Jai Hind. Very pertinent issues raised by you. See, firstly, let's be very, very clear. As regards the Israel-Palestinian solution is concerned, I think historically, since 2000 years BCE, this problem has been deep-rooted historically. And this land of, the Palestine and the Israeli present day was known as the land of Canaan. And this was promised to Abraham and his descendants, which the God had promised to them. Now, since then, Israel has been invaded number of times, from Persia, from Iraq, and from Romans and everyone. And then we are aware about, the Ottoman Empire and Balfour Declaration and till date and, so many wars, 67, 73 war. So the fact of the matter is that this is a multifaceted dimension. The deep-rooted historical conflicts continue. And I really don't foresee a long-term solution. You're very right that two-state solution is one of the way out which President Biden had produced. And I think the Hamas has missed a golden opportunity when President Biden and Kamala Harris, when they were in command, they had very clearly stated that we are in for a two-state solution. And that was the time in case Hamas would have released all the hostages and whatever things were happening in time, I think it would have been a golden opportunity for Palestinian two-state solution. And this was also endorsed by the West and also by Russia and including India. So everyone endorsed it, but I think Hamas was stubborn and they continue to show their stubbornness and obstinacy. And therefore, the result is 19th January, again, the peace talks commenced. Not the peace talks, the peace implementation, and which we are aware was a 6-week peace. The phase 1 was declared. But after phase 1, the phase 2, which was to go on, that has totally now perished in the background. And as on date, you are very right that Israel is now going to renew the offensive once again. And today there are reports that they are going to launch a huge onslaught of ground offensive. So therefore, does the solution lie in a two-state solution? I think the way President Trump has now been stating since long, that we'll convert Gaza into a Mediterranean Riviera and all those things. And the people of Palestine needs to be taken by Jordan and Egypt and maybe even Saudi Arabia. So the fact of the matter is that two-state solution theory is somehow now going to the background with President Trump in command. Number two, even the West Bank, you have seen the onslaught has increased. And there is a US policy with the Prime Minister Netanyahu to rename that area as Samaria and Judea. So they want to rename that. And you are also aware President Trump in his 1.0 tenure had moved the embassy from Tel Aviv, the US embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, because Jerusalem continues to be a bone of contention because both sides wanted to be there, declare their capital. And of course, it has got religious affinity for all the three major religions there, that is Islam and of course Judaism and Christianity. So the way things are going on, and when President Trump and I think now stubbornness has now come by the right-wing extremist party in the case of Prime Minister Netanyahu, who has now been supported back with these hardliners. I think there seems to be no immediate solution, and Steve Witkoff also, who's the special envoy, has really made no headway. As of date, things are not making any headway. So my feeling is it's going to be a very, very delayed affair. And how does it, come out in the open is going to be taking a lot of time.
Okay. So understandably, it looks like, and as both of you are pointing out, and the experts elsewhere are also pointing out, that the situation in this region is much more complicated than it looks on the outside. Multifaceted issues. Seemingly, solutions will have to be some out-of-box thinking here. Perhaps traditional ways of looking at solutions and resolutions might not be the ones which might make headway here. But let's look at the larger implications, Ambassador Gupta, as I was pointing out earlier, and let's start with Israel and Palestine, Hamas, and its neighbors as well. But more specifically, when we look at Israel, a lot has changed in terms of its domestic politics after 7th of October 2023, and also in terms of its relations with its staunch allies like United States of America. Remember, in the past, less than a decade or so, Israel has been pushing for an autonomy in terms of to have an autonomous say in its relationship with United States of America. But does it look like that it's back to square one as far as Israel-US relationship is concerned? They're now dependent upon support from the USA, both on the international forums and in terms of defense exports and all kind of armaments.
Well, Israel and US have maintained always a very close relationship. Israel depends a great deal on armament support, on political and diplomatic support from US. US, on the other hand, has been supportive of Israel, sometimes compromising its principled positions because of domestic politics. There are more than 5 million, maybe 6 million Jews in America. And they are all very well integrated. There are agencies which coordinate their voting effort, their lobbying effort. So Indians are also about 4 or 5 million people, but they don't project themselves into such a strong lobby as the Jews do. So I think every political party, there is a competitive attention given to the Jews in America, and correspondingly the policy towards Israel. But I think, having said that, there is a broad degree of support in America and the international community for what you call a two-state solution. I wouldn't call it even permanent, because permanent solution involves a lot of very ticklish and very sensitive things to which there would be no immediate solution. General was right. Jerusalem is a very contentious issue. And for Palestinians, it would be difficult to forsake their ownership or their claim over Jerusalem.
Their claim on Jerusalem.
But what can happen, you see, when I was in Israel and when the peace process in Middle East had begun, the Prime Minister was former General, Prime Minister Rabin, and he advanced this solution of two-state. He said, Israel doesn't want to keep the Palestinians as part of Israel because they would be a drag on Israel's progress. They're different people. So Israel would be better off, Israeli population would be better off if Palestinians were given a separate, independent state of their own. And they should mind their own affairs. So I think there can be no possibility, there can be no other solution. Whatever out of box, Palestinians have to be given an independent, separate territory of their own to manage. West Bank, now the funny thing is that you have two segments like Pakistan, East Pakistan, West Pakistan. And the coordination becomes that much more difficult. But I think both these territories will remain with Palestine in any eventual settlement. The hardliners also do not object to a Palestinian state in the territory. What they are asking for is there are settlements along the Green Line, along the border in West Bank, and the radical people. What they are trying to do is fatten these settlements. Adding new settlements almost every day along the dividing line, along the Green Line, which separates border of Israel with the West Bank. And they say that they have a right to settle over there. So those are the issues. And also there are settlements in East Jerusalem coming along. But there are vast areas in the East Jerusalem which are still in a practical manner controlled by the Palestinians. The people, Palestinians living in East Jerusalem, vote for the Palestinian election. So, in practical terms, I don't think Israelis would be very anathematic to the idea that some areas of East Jerusalem can be controlled by the Palestinian territory, the West Bank, and the West Bank and those things. But of course, they will need
Okay.
solid, concrete guarantees on security. Now,
Okay.
the Israelis
Well,
would not permit a separate solution, a separate state, but with the rockets coming in from there, terrorists coming in from there, if that happens, then Israelis would renege on any agreement to have a separate Palestinian state. But I think eventually that is something that has to happen. There is no other solution.
okay, okay. So security guarantee is the major issue here when we are trying to look at how the territories can be divided, or how can it be become a two-state solution can be implemented in some way or the other. But that's something which looks like as of now a long shot, because both sides are engaged in a very fierce war. General Meston, let's also look at the Palestinian side. There has been a sea change, a very humongous change for factions, various factions on the Palestinian side as well, post 7th October 2023. For example, Israeli strikes have almost wiped out the entire Hamas leadership. A new leadership is emerging. Same goes for Hezbollah as well. Across the border in Lebanon also there has been a change of leadership. All these sympathizers with the Palestinian cause and all. How do you see these changes manifesting themselves and perhaps having an impact on the long-term solution?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the long-term solution is that probably both communities, Israelis and the Palestinians, have to have the art of coexistence. And as rightfully pointed out by Ambassador, see, the issue is security guarantees is an important aspect. And I think the way Israel is today going about, it is already started looking towards that direction. See, if you see, it has occupied the Golan Heights. Now it has gone fairly up to the Litani River in Lebanon. So that again becomes a buffer zone kind of a thing. And now in the West Bank and also within Gaza, if you have seen, they have occupied, the entire the South Gaza corridor. That they have totally occupied, and that is why that is the biggest fear, because all the arms, ammunition, everything has been coming from Egypt. So that is what their interest is, to have that. So maybe that in the long term, the way Prime Minister Netanyahu is going about, they may be looking for a little kind of a small buffer zone, which will give them strategic depth, maybe in the Gaza area and also in the West Bank area, so that they have some kind of security. The second aspect of security is that both sides have to have restraint, tolerance. If they start attacking each other, then the very purpose of coexistence ceases. So, absolutely, this point is very valid that both sides have to coexist and the solution is possible. But security guarantees, I think both sides have to have restraint. And once things are finalized on ground with some kind of buffer zone. See, because the lesson learnt of 7th October is that Israelis have been actually surprised, despite the best of technology on the Gaza Strip area. And I had incidentally been to 2007 to Israel with the Indian Army chief. I was a colonel that time, so we were briefed and taken all along these stretches. So I remember the biggest concern was that, and yet they were surprised. So now in future they do not want to be surprised. So therefore they would be looking buffer zones in all the areas which they have extended now in Golan Heights and Litani River side in Lebanon. Number two
Okay.
is that how the things are unfolding. Since you have raised the issue of how it is impacting the Palestinian, I think if you see, the nerve center for all this was Iran. Now, whatever has happened, what has happened in Syria, the regime change, and Iraq also, the so basically what I'm trying to say is Iran's hold on these proxies, including in Syria and Iraq, has been marginalized to quite an extent. And the way even the Americans are now bombarding the Houthis in Yemen. So therefore, I would say Iran's role has been negated to quite an extent. They have been also isolated in the Arab world. Today, if you see, the peace talks have been taken lead by Qatar, by UAE, by Egypt, by Jordan, and Saudi Arabia. In Saudi Arabia has been given a lot of leeway by United States in even holding the US, Russia, and Ukraine peace talks over there. So it has got a larger implication. So I feel that in the near future, the way these some Arab states are cooperating with the United States, rebuilding for construction of Gaza, I feel the Abraham Accords are in offing, and more countries may sign the Abraham Accords.
Okay.
Iran has now been isolated. As regards an aspect of China is concerned, which you are mentioning.
We'll come to the China part, General Meston. But since you pointed out, the role of the Arab world and Iran's role diminishing to a larger extent, other players like Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Qatar, they emerging. Let's also take a view from Ambassador Gupta here. Ambassador Gupta, do you agree with this point that this war between Israel and Hamas, the latest conflict, has changed a lot in the Arab world, internal equations, overall geopolitical equations, and have raised the stakes for some and sort of, brought under control the influence which was exerted by others like Iran?
Well, that's a very valid point, actually. How the Arab countries, particularly the Gulf countries, they're playing an increased role in peacemaking. Uh, and I think clearly President Trump has brought in Saudi Arabia to play a larger role. Now, when we're talking about Israel not agreeing to a two-state solution or an independent Palestinian state, my sense is that they will eventually agree to it, but they will use that as a leveraging bargain. And in return, what they would want, a full integration, a full rehabilitation in the international community, particularly amongst the Arab nations. So I think they will want to see an expanded Abraham Accords.
Yeah, because for Israel, the larger enemy is Iran.
Well, Iran, didn't have a much. They were playing a role in Lebanon with Hezbollah. I don't think they had a very, poignant, very prominent role with. Another thing that is very likely to happen, and in fact, I think General also referred to, dissensions within the Palestinian ranks. As you know, the West Bank is ruled by Fatah, and the Gaza was ruled by Hamas. Hamas is more radical, terrorist organization. If they could undertake a daring attack on Israel and take away 250 hostages and killed more than 1,000 people, I think clearly one of the biggest terrorist incidents that we have seen. So I think there is very little appetite to deal with Hamas now. And I get a sense that probably Israel would also want to see the complete elimination of Hamas. And eventually for the Palestinian issue to be completely within the hold of Fatah. Now, whether this will happen easily is very difficult to say, because surely, a lot of high-ranking people, the leadership of Hamas has been eliminated. Even mid-rank leadership has been eliminated. But of course, the new people keep emerging all the time. The Fatah leadership, the West Bank leadership, has to play a more assertive role. And they have to be told by the Americans that, look, if you want a permanent settlement, if you want to make a headway on Israel-Palestinian issue, then they don't trust Hamas. Israel would not trust Hamas. And nobody trusts a radical terrorist organization. So, and they, as long as they're not ready to abjure terrorism, I think the Americans, the Israelis, and the Gulf countries, the Arab countries which have been brought in fact, all these negotiations which are going on, even to resume peace again, the second phase, mind you, Egypt is playing a big role in it. Saudi Arabia is playing a big role in it. Qatar is playing a big role. So I think their influence can also help kind of zero in or, completely isolate Hamas and put the Palestinian role, Palestinian thing entirely in the bucket of the West Bank leadership, which is Fatah group, which is a more moderate group.
Okay, General Meston, you're talking about China. Let's come to the China part now, because as Mr. Gupta was talking about and pointing out the role which is to be played by various factions in the Palestinian territory, be it in Gaza or West Bank as well, specifically Fatah. When we look at China, we've seen a larger role being played by China. China has seemingly managed to extract a role for itself, because in December last year, that is December 2024, all of us are aware about the Beijing Declaration, wherein they brought in all the factions in Palestine together and sort of made them have a discussion. So seemingly, it looks like China has managed to gain a foothold in a region, in a conflict with which it had nothing to do before 7th of October 2023.
Yeah, very right. China's attempts is very clear that they want to have a greater foothold in West Asia, and therefore they have been making all kinds of possible inroads. And I think one of the biggest initiatives they took was, bringing Iran and Saudi Arabia on the dialogue table. That was one of their best initiatives. And of course, they have been trying their BRI initiatives in West Asia and all over the world, which we are well aware, and including what they have been doing in Afghanistan. I will also just like to bring in Afghanistan, because since I was posted there in the embassy as the defense attaché, I recollect China even today. They are making a lot of inroads in Afghanistan for a large number of reasons, economic interest. There are a large number of mines and the mineral resources. But yesterday only, if you have seen, a major aspect is taken where Americans, the three Haqqanis, that is Sirajuddin Haqqani, Abdul Aziz Haqqani, and Yahya Haqqani, they have removed the bounty and not declared them as terrorists. So it's got a major role. Why I'm highlighting this aspect is American intent and aim is very, very clear. They want China to be totally out from Central Asia and West Asia. And this is what I think India has also got a very, very important role. And that is why the way we are marginalizing or sidelining China in West Asia, one is the economic aspect, the launching of the IMEC Corridor. I think that has been one of the finest master strokes by India during the G20 summit, that we have planned this IMEC corridor, and this connects us right, through UAE and through Jordan and to Israel, and therefore right up to Europe. So this is the master stroke, and China now gets isolated on this. Number two, the way Americans are today giving a lot of leverage to Saudi Arabia, including the Russia-Ukraine talks. I think it is giving due importance and credibility to Saudi Arabia, and therefore all these allies which we just talked about, not allies, important partners there, Qatar, UAE, etc., Egypt, Jordan. Now they have started indirectly, I would say, siding with Saudi Arabia, and maybe they have now become a little faction, I would say, against the Iran. So therefore, China's aim also gets relegated. What they were trying to have cozy relations between Saudi Arabia and Iran. So I think, and yeah, India is also playing a major role, because West Asia, if we see in isolation, I think we should take even Iran. The fact that we are developing the Chabahar Corridor and having the international north-south transport corridor, again, is a thing which we are trying to do away with the BRI initiative in the CPEC, what they have done in Pakistan, China. So my feeling is that today, President Trump is very, very clear. Wherever China's influence is there, they want to relegate it. I think the latest Haqqani, all the bounties being removed is a great point. They want to, and now they want to even have their embassy functioning in Afghanistan for only one reason, that they want to check, of course, the influence of Pakistan and China in Afghanistan. And number two, of course, they have the mineral resources. So where the things are going on, I think American influence is very clear. The way he's talking about Greenland. Greenland has also got something to do with the influence of China and Russia in that context, in that area. So they're taking active steps, United States, to marginalize Chinese influence all over, including what we have seen in the Panama Canal. So I think it is to the good the way the new world order is developing, which really no world order it is today. But Indian interests seem to be now converging, and I think the way we are even having multilateral dialogue with so many of the Arab countries, including GCC, I think that's a very good thing. So all this is Indian diplomacy strategy to isolate, or I will not use the word isolate, to marginalize Chinese influence, and this is what exactly America is trying. So our uh, strategic interest of United States and India is in congruence to what of
it serves our purpose as well there. Let's take a quick concluding comment from Mr. Gupta on this point as well. Mr. Gupta, when we look at the, as General Meston is pointing out, when we look at the larger geopolitical ramifications and the changes happening, in the previous decade, we saw how Russia managed to gain a much more stronger foothold in West Asia conflicts in regions like Syria and all. And right now we're looking at how China managed to, entangle itself in that particular region. The United States, of course, would try and keep both at bay. As far as India is concerned, also there are several things which we will have to be mindful of, and several things wherein we can strike a finer balance, because we have cordial relations with both Russia and Iran there.
Well, China is too big a power. And I think it'd be very pretentious for us to even presume that India is in a position to isolate China. That's not going to happen. That cannot happen. We don't have that capacity. I think so. Let's take a reality check on it. There is no point. I've seen this kind of jingoistic narrative being given around that India has become Vishwaguru, India has become a global power. We don't have that kind of role. Today, China brings in enormous amount of money on the table, which even America will not bring. Now, Trump has become very transactional. Trump is not in a habit of putting in that free money, and because every money that he provides, he's going to ask for its accountability. China is still in a position to give a lot of money without asking for any accounts. So I think in any reconstruction, in anything that is post-settlement that will happen, China's role cannot be, we are not in a position to prevent China from playing that role. Besides, another thing,
but we can benefit from what the United States policy on China or Russia might have been, and we have our own relationship, sort of a de-hyphenated sort of approach as far as Russia and Iran are concerned.
Sure, all of that, yes. But I think if you look at the Palestine, although President Trump's coming back and taking an assertive position on Palestine has pushed China into some sort of background, but China's role cannot be completely obviated. China will continue to play a role. China has tremendous clout with several Palestinian factions, Fatah and Hamas, and then there are, of course, also fringe factions. And I think China, as a global power, has tremendous connectivity with those, networking with those organizations. And at some point in time, China will have to be brought in of course, America today is playing, America has traditionally played a very important role in brokering Middle East peace between the Israel and Palestinians. And if they continue to do so, but it will also depend if America would seemingly take a non-partisan approach. If America is seen to be taking very, very pro-Israeli approach, then they would lose the trust of the Palestinians. And they alone would not be able to push the Palestinians to come to the table. And in that situation, Americans would need China. That is if they want a certain kind of peace, permanent settlement. I can tell you, having lived in Israel, average man and woman, the average Israeli person wants peace. He doesn't want to live in the kind of sense of siege mentality, with guns blazing at the border, with a fear of Palestinians coming inside their cities and throwing a bomb. People in Israel are very tired, are very insecure, and like you and me in other countries, they also want peace. So I think if it's put to a test, don't forget that Netanyahu is वो कहते हैं ना दूध में धुले हुए नहीं है. He is himself a very big radical extremist. And I don't think that the Israeli people, general public, is supportive of that approach. Israelis want peace as much as the Palestinians want peace. And I think eventually that will prevail.
Indeed, peace is the final resolution for all kind of conflicts. Violent, conflicts cannot find a solution to whatever the situation is, howsoever easy or complex it might be. And ultimately, all citizens all across the globe, in whichever country they reside, would of course look forward to a peaceful resolution, a peaceful existence and coexistence with their neighbors as well. But this being a very complicated situation, both of you gentlemen, I'd like to thank you very much, Mr. Gupta and General Meston as well, for explaining the situation on the ground to us in very simpler terms, and also the ramification of this ongoing Israel-Hamas war, not only for these two parties, but the global geopolitical ramifications as well for international players like United States, China, Iran, the Arab world, and of course, what India's role in this situation can be. Once again, thank you so much, gentlemen. We'll be back again next week with a different topic and a different set of experts to try and analyze and understand issues of international importance on the worldview. Keep watching The Dialoguers. Thank you.